Scott. I'm the Assistant Dean of the Career Management Group and Corporate Partnerships at UC Berkeley Haas. When it comes to career outcomes for our MBA students, we're actually known for having a lot of diversity of outcomes. We're not a school that sends 40%, 50% of students to one industry. In fact, in the last year, consulting and technology were our largest two sectors, and each of them were about 25%. So I think the first thing is that coming to Berkeley Haas, there are a lot of choices. There's a lot of diversity of interests, and that's one of the things that our students really appreciate. The second thing that happens for us is because of this diversity of industries, we're not always a school that has high percentages of students employed at graduation. That may sound a little bit funny, but students are really willing to hold out for the right role. If students are recruiting in climate tech or for venture capital, maybe you want to work for a startup, that recruiting happens much closer to graduation. Firms may be hiring just one person. And so our students really are often willing to wait for the right role. So while at graduation, not as many of our students are as employed as at other top schools, by 3 months after graduation and by 6 months after graduation, our students do really well and do see that terrific return on their investment. And I guess the final thing I'll say about career outcomes is what we hear from employers. Our employers reflect back to us how our students and graduates are curious, they're problem solvers, they're highly analytical, but also they're humble and they're flexible and willing to sort of step in and do the work. And this fits our defining leadership principles quite well. It's really the culture of who we attract and who we graduate. When you come to Berkeley Haas, preparation for your career search starts really early. So our two largest, most popular job functions, roles are consulting, management consulting, and product management. So as early as May, before students matriculate, we offer some exploration and prep to help students decide, do they want to pursue one of these two areas? And so there's some online courses that we offer there. For most students, if they're international students, they'll arrive in early August, so actually about 3 or 4 weeks before classes start. And we kick off with a full day of career orientation at that time. After the main campus and Haas orientation, we then meet with students again for a week of career essentials, we call it. And our goal that week is to get students starting in the program with a resume that they're excited about. Certainly students are building a great resume and applying for business school, but we want to work with students to get it even to the next level, to start to talk about some of the transferable skills that we know that they want to highlight for a career that they may be heading into. We also want to orient students to all the resources, all the people resources, the systems resources. There's a lot of support once you're here. So that is something that we work on during Career Essentials. But in essence, we're just really teaching students, new MBA students, how to conduct a job search at a leadership level, because that is what our students are doing. And that includes, a big part of it is networking, how to network. What are the systems in place to network? What does that look like in the US, as it might be a little bit different from students' home country. We also match students during that time with a career coach. A career coach is someone on our career team who will serve as a guide for the student for their time, for their 2 years in the program, if it's the full-time program. But we also have an open scheduling model so that after you meet with your coach initially, you can choose to meet with anyone. Maybe your roommate had a great conversation about how to tell a story with a different coach. As a student, you're welcome to choose the coach that works for you. Consulting and technology tend to be the top two industries, each represented last year about 25% of the class. Financial services is usually next. That includes both investment banks as well as venture capital firms, a little bit of fintech. Healthcare is a popular industry. We have a dual degree, an MBA and PH, so that tends to get a nice healthy chunk of students. We always have students interested in energy and clean energy in particular, so climate tech, maybe electric vehicles, mobility, as I mentioned, those are popular industries. We have certainly students that go into the consumer packaged goods and retail space, as well as nonprofits. So we cover the gamut. Ultimately, students really are in charge of their career search. They are driving the process. The student, pretty soon after they arrive on campus, has to start making some choices because you can't go to everything. There's just not enough time in the day. So coming into an MBA program with a pretty strong sense of what you think you want to do helps with that time management. Otherwise, it's impossible to be at all these places at the same time. Investment banking is the biggest slice of our finance community. As you can imagine, given all the transactions, all the M&A activity, IPOs, that sort of thing happening in both technology and healthcare, which are the two industries that are right here, primarily in our backyard. Investment banks do a lot of that work right here. And so naturally, they're coming to Berkeley Haas to recruit talent. And in fact, we tend to have one of the largest shares of schools represented in these local offices, whether it's San Francisco, Silicon Valley, or Los Angeles. So that's a really organized, kind of formal recruiting process. So students really during the month of September, early into October, students put on their suits and they'll come and meet all the different investment banks. It's several nights a week for about 6 weeks, but it's a great opportunity to meet face-to-face, hear the differences between some of the investment banks, and then actually talk with the bankers to kick off their job search. So that one starts the earliest. That's investment banking. Also within finance, venture capital, also popular with our students. That actually happens a lot later. It's much more informal, much more student-driven. There's tons of activities and ways that students can connect with the venture capital community, both on campus and off campus nearby. But that's just a very different process that's driven by the student and less organized by industry. The second industry I'll mention is consulting. Consulting recruiting is very much underway right now for summer internships, just like investment banking. Management consulting firms are really excited to get to know our students. They tend to have some kind of a virtual presentation, usually to kick off and allow many students to see what that work might be like. And then from there, they tend to hold coffee chats on campus. Just yesterday, we had one of the top firms kind of spread out all around our space, round tables, 2 or 3 students at a time, talking with folks who work there. And then we tend to have a couple of big signature events where we'll bring all the consulting firms together, bring the alumni back as a way to reconnect with them. Students participate in that as well. And then finally, let me just talk quickly about tech, because tech is one of our large industries. It's kind of all over the place how the tech firms recruit. Some of the bigger hiring firms, Google, Amazon, Adobe, to say a few names, that tend to recruit this way. They'll come to campus and have a big presentation. They'll bring alumni, and then oftentimes they'll post roles that they'll invite students to apply for. And so the student process goes from there and usually gives students a chance to go into their offices to see what it's like to work in those facilities. Smaller tech firms, startups, very different process. They tend to be hiring maybe just one student. And so that's a network-driven process, a relationship-based search. So even though the hiring happens much later in the spring, the students really do start to try to refine kind of what is the area within the tech startup community where they feel like they can add value and they want to work. And then working with alumni, they tend to get out and try to meet with these firms and the alums in those firms. So all that to say, depending on the industry that students are targeting, the process looks a little bit different, but there's a lot going on to support students, whether it's a highly structured search like investment banking or management consulting, or a highly unstructured search like venture capital, startups, clean tech, etc. It's been really fun to hear the stories of our second-year students who have just returned from their summer internships. You know, many of them, of course, we worked with along the way last year to finding their summer internships. But a few we heard became employed, they reported their role in our systems, but then hearing their stories as they've come back to campus has been really fun. And I have to tell you, alumni are at the heart of all of these stories. It's typically either an alum that posted the role. We have a big initiative that we push out every spring called Hire Haas, and we call on our alumni community to find roles within their companies to share with us. And that always generates hundreds of jobs. In the fall, like I said, as the second-year students have returned, we've been hearing their stories at these industry primers that we host as an opportunity for a new student to come explore, like, what's it like to work in the real estate sector, let's say? What's it like to work in a foundation? And so we host a variety of these events. And as I said earlier, the second-year stories often reflect how much alums were part of their journey. So that's really been fun to just have reinforced. We have a lot of students that get stock, either stock grants or stock options as part of their compensation package. So we've started to report that on our website in the employment report. And the number depends on the year. It could be anywhere from 35 to 45% of our students get additional stock as part of their compensation. And that tends to be really significant in thinking about ROI over the long run for students that are joining the tech sector, healthcare, fintech, et cetera. The second thing that I think is a growing trend is impact. And many of our graduates report that their role or their company is one that either has a social or environmental impact. And so we tend to roll up those data. Again, each year it tends to be around 20% of our students. That cuts across many industries. It could be a consulting firm that's doing work in the nonprofit space or in the environmental field. It could be a climate tech startup. It could be a healthcare organization that's doing work in rural Brazil. It could be a number of different things. But anyway, impact is something that a lot of our students want to have. And as I said, about 20% or more do find roles where they can have a direct impact. And then the last thing I'll say, I've talked about startups a couple of times. It's a big part of our ecosystem, whether you're starting your own company as an entrepreneur or you're wanting to join a startup to get that experience, to be able to step into a role where you're wearing a lot of different hats. Usually around 15 to 20% of our students are working in that space, either starting their own company or joining a startup. So those are the three things: stock, impact, and startups, that I think are maybe not as apparent from our employment report, but I think a big part of what our students enjoy. Yeah, well, it's fun. We always look closely at salaries for a couple of reasons. One, first of all, we want to be sure that there is salary equity across genders and different backgrounds. And so I'm happy to share that continues to look really quite good at graduation. So salary is a big part of compensation. Of course, it's the recurring revenue stream, if you will. But there's a lot more to compensation than just salary. That said, our salaries are top of the charts as it relates to industry. So what I'll say is salary is very dependent on industry. And so as students are looking at going into one of the industries that's higher paying, say consulting or investment banking, again, based on base salary and signing bonus, our students do very well. When you look at the industry diversity, obviously we then create an average starting salary, and it reflects the diversity of industries. So one of the reasons we started sharing a little bit more about stock options and stock grants is we know it's an important part of students' comp. I, as I said earlier, really look carefully at ROI. We want to make sure that the students, because they're making a huge investment to come back to business school, we want to make sure the ROI is there, and we see it very quickly. Students do see that return on investment. So our full-time MBA program is one of the smaller programs among the top tier institutions. We tend to have between 250 and 300 students in each class. This incoming class that just started, I think, is about 275. And because of that, we really know our students, and our faculty know our students, our administration knows our students. And so we take a school-wide approach to career outcomes. What I mean by that is, certainly, as I mentioned earlier, there's a career coach within the career management group where I sit that will be your guide as a student, but we also encourage you to participate in some of the things happening around the campus, like some of the centers and institutes that are really well connected with industry. Everything from the Center for Responsible Business to the Center for Social Sector Leadership to the Energy Institute. There are a number of faculty-led centers where students gravitate because they're finding like-minded folks, they're finding connections to industry, they're finding projects and ways to meet people that ultimately will support their career goals. So that school-wide approach leads to some kind of unique things that we do. We actually, in our office, host each spring faculty career chats where many of our professional faculty, the adjuncts, the lecturers who tend to have one foot in industry and one foot teaching on campus, we know that they have amazing connections, and so do the students. So we try to just take the administrative burden off of them, invite them to come spend an afternoon in our office, and we'll have students sign up to meet with them. And ultimately, really what these faculty are doing is opening up their network, which is terrific. We also have something kind of unique to Berkeley. Actually, it's campus-wide. It's not just a business school thing where students can initiate a course. For example, at the undergraduate level, I think there's always a course on Harry Potter or Taylor Swift. But at the MBA level, we tend to have these speaker series courses. They're a little more serious, but it's a wonderful opportunity. Let's say a student's interested in joining the real estate sector. Each week, someone from industry will come and share their experience, talk about their career. These are student-led courses. They are for credit, and they're an amazing way for the Berkeley Haas community to tap into industry to gain additional knowledge about career resources while getting some credit along the way. And then the final thing I'll say, because immigration is such a tough topic right now in the US, we have, in addition to the campus-wide resources that we offer students on student visa questions, we have an immigration attorney that we contract with that comes several times a year and just holds information sessions on the different visa paths to a more permanent permission to work in the US. And then she holds one-on-one appointments that our office pays for to help answer very specific questions, because everybody's journey is a little bit different. So that's something that we know is a little bit unique, and we're really proud to be able to offer that to our students. Well, I love that this is the final question, because an MBA is all about leadership, right? It's a leadership lab in order to prepare for a future in leadership. That's the reason to come and get an MBA. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, that can take a lot of different industry paths. But ultimately, we're teaching students to think long-term, to think about where they want to be in, not just that first job out of school, but where do they want to be in 10 years, in 20 years? The MBA application process, I think, causes some really healthy reflection on that. And so coming to an MBA program like UC Berkeley Haas really, I think, sets you on that leadership journey. And it's in the classroom, it's out of the classroom, it's telling your story. All of those ways, I think, prepare you for ultimately finding that role and, hitting your stride later in your career. We also, for students that graduate into a job that, they're on a path, and let's say mid-career, they choose to pivot and want to come back. We actually offer career appointments for life for our alumni. Students can come back once they're alums anytime to meet with us, and they do, which is really fun to check in with them, years after they've left the building. So.